Hey everybody, it's Brickwaffle here, and today we are going to do a little bit of a how-to on the Tinker's Construct mod. Now this mod is in the Hermitcraft mod sauce pack as well as Feed the Beast Infinity, and today I'm actually using Feed the Beast Infinity, as you may be able to tell, because this village has some walls around it. It's one of the nice things about the Feed the Beast Infinity pack is it does generate some interesting new villages with some new building types and some guards up there to help keep the villagers safe. That's kind of beside the point. Today what I wanted to look at is the Smeltery. So when you come into a village, very often you will see these smelteries kind of just hanging out. Most of the time they generate with a village. Sometimes you'll even get a shop that actually has some of the Tinker's Construct tables with it as well. But I wanted to show you a little bit about how to take this from this setup to something you can actually use for smelting ore, because the way they generate, it doesn't actually do anything. It's not a valid multi-block structure this way. And it's missing just a few pieces, and I think that's by design. And it also has a few extra pieces that you don't really necessarily need, but it doesn't hurt to have them. So the three components that we're missing, if you look at Smeltery in the NEI here, you need at least a Smeltery controller, the brain of the Smeltery. You need a Smeltery drain, at least one of those. In this case, you would need 4 to get this thing all the way up and running. And then you also need a seared tank to keep any fluids in it. And that's where you put lava or whatever other fluid you're using to power this thing. Let's start by how we actually build these things. So if we look at the recipe for this, Smeltery controller is just seared bricks, like a chest. The Smeltery drain is the same thing, but with openings on either side. And the seared tank is just like the Smeltery controller, but with any kind of glass in the middle. So how do you get these seared bricks? Well, you smelt grout. Or you can also get them from a different source, which is these brown bricks over here. This is from smelting slime soil. So slime soil is soul sand, gravel, and nether wart, or tainted soil, heat sand, and nether wart. Both of those are going to give you 2 slime soil. That's usually not as easy to get as the grout is, though, so let's go back and look at that recipe again. That's either 1 clay ball, 1 sand, and 1 gravel, or 1 block of clay, and then 4 sand and 4 gravel. That's usually the route I like to go because it's not hard to combine this clay, and you get 8 out of each one of these combined instead of 2. It's the exact same amount, you can just do it a little bit faster this way. So, find a river, and actually in this desert that might be a little tricky to do. But once you find a river, get some clay. Obviously sand is not going to be a problem, gravel is generally not a problem. You make that grout, and then you cook it up. Oops, and I didn't mean to give myself 64 of those. So when you cook this in any kind of table, you get a seared brick. And those seared bricks you can use 4 of to make the actual seared brick construction block as well. Now once you have these things, you can go ahead and put them in the table. So let's go ahead and give myself 1 of each of these. Oops, or 111 of each of these. That's going to work just fine. Doesn't really matter. The point is that what you need to do is put a Smeltery controller on one of these edges and a tank on one of these edges. Now generally I like to do that away from the casting tables just because you can see that at this point it's perfectly valid. It'll cook metal, but there's really no easy way to get it out of there. Use these drains facing these tables, and that allows you to pour into a casting basin, generally to make blocks of metal, or into a casting table to make all of the parts you need for Tinker's Construct. Now if you have extra bricks and you want to do the other side, you can do that as well, and the only reason you might want to consider doing this is if you really need to generate a whole lot of this at once. You could have this all automated and pour out into the tables, ingots, whatever else you needed to. Generally speaking, though, that's probably not something you want to do. In the long run, you're probably going to want to do multiple ore processing somewhere else. This is double ore processing, but there are better ways to do that in other mods. So the other thing you're going to need that doesn't come with this is faucets. And a faucet is just 3 of those bricks in a little bucket pattern. And these faucets are extremely important. Without these, you can't actually do anything. Where you can't do anything with these tables. So we put those in there, and now once we smelt something, we can actually pour it into these basins or onto the casting table. Alright, so let's give ourselves some lava, fill this thing up, and see what it looks like. So usually it'll hold 4 buckets of lava. And the other option, the question I got sometimes in one of my Let's Play videos is, why would you ever use the smelter's glass? So if I go back here and I look at Seared Glass, and I put one of these in. There's a couple different ones, Seared Glass and Seared Windows. I'll show you what they look like. They're just slightly different. This is going to break our structure temporarily, but let's put this in. That's the Seared Glass, and the Seared Windows are just a slightly different pattern. This has kind of like the graduated marks, and this just has kind of bevels. I like putting this in just so that I can see the liquid inside, and you'll see that this is a perfectly valid construction as well. So you can use this one on every side. You can move the controller around a little bit. Sometimes I'll do that and put the glass in here. And then I'll do this. And it's purely for decorative purposes. It's just so that you can see what fluids are actually in this thing very easily. Now, a very important thing to note in survival, let me get rid of all this stuff here. When you come across one of these villages, if you don't have a lot of grout, you can actually break this, and you don't actually need all the pieces in the corners. So you can take out all the corner pieces, right there, and then just replace the middle here, and you get all those extra blocks from the corners that you don't need for the structure that you can put on top and make this actually a little bit taller. So imagine if I went all the way around there, I left a gap under that, and then I made this all one taller with those same blocks, because there's exactly that many, right? It's exactly the same footprint. Oops. Now it's one taller. So what? The height of the smeltery will determine how many inventory slots there are for melting at a time. So you can actually melt enough metals if you don't cast them out to go, in some cases you could go over the top in some Tinker's Construct patches. I'm pretty sure in most of the latest Feed the Beast and Mod Sauce you can't do that. You can't actually go over the top. But this holds quite a bit. Really, it's most important for how many things you can cook at a time. So if you really want to get into this, having a lot of space at the top can make this pretty nice. And you can go up pretty dramatically. Let me see if I can get a builder's wand here. And just do this a few times. And you can see, probably not very easily, but here you can imagine, if you will, that this scrolls all the way down. There's a current bug in Feed the Beast where you can't really see where this thing is when you're moused over it. But you can see that it scrolls for quite a bit here. So that would hold an incredible amount of items. And yeah, I could do glass all the way up so I could see the liquid all the way up here. But this is just kind of nice to see what liquid is coming up next without having to actually look in the controller. You'll see a representation of that as well. Okay, so imagine that this is not quite so tall, and this is our first smeltery here. And what do we want to do? Obviously we want some iron, and we probably are going to find copper pretty commonly, and then aluminum. Those are usually your three most common ores. They're usually easy to find near the surface, and they're all very important. Copper and aluminum in particular for this. To make casts with the casting table, in order to get anything else, you need to actually pour aluminum, brass, or gold around an object to make a mold of it. So if you're just looking for ingots, the easiest thing to do, let's get some aluminum. Oops, if I can spell it. We need, let's see, a couple of aluminum ore. Let's just get one aluminum ore and one copper, three copper ore. And the reason I'm getting 1 to 3, I'll show you here just in a second. So they have different kinds of copper, but generally, if you use the Tinker's Construct stuff, you know it's going to work. Most mods have ore dictionaries so that any of this copper becomes the same molten copper. Well, let's go ahead and put this all in here. You can just shift-click it in like any inventory. And you see it actually shows up here in the smeltery itself, which is kind of neat. That's another reason to have the windows, is so you can see what's cooking. But you can see that aluminum melts a little bit faster than copper. It's got a lower melting point, and you can see the fuel is ticking down. So every tick, it'll take some fuel and increase the process of melting these ores. And when we're done, you'll see it actually show up as liquid both here in this indicator, and you can see it in the smeltery itself. So aluminum is a pink molten liquid, and then copper is obviously orange. One thing that's interesting here is when you combine two metals that can be alloyed, it'll actually combine them into that alloy. So here, it turned it into molten copper and some aluminum brass. And you can see that they're kind of stacked on top of each other. It's a little bit hard to see because I only have a few ingots worth. But what happens if you wanted to pour out the copper first? You can just click these to toggle whichever one you want to go to the bottom, and that'll pour out next. So why aluminum brass? Well, the first thing you're probably going to want to do is make an ingot cast. So in order to make an ingot cast, you need some kind of ingot-shaped object to put on the casting table. Generally, when you're making these, you'll have some extra seared bricks. So let's just see if we can grab one of those. Seared brick, and any kind of brick will actually work here. You put that on the casting table, and you pour the aluminum brass on it by right-clicking the faucet, and after a second, you have an ingot cast. Now you can cast any metal that you want. So if we wanted to cast some copper ingots, we just come back over here, we click the copper, and boom. We've got a copper ingot. The nice thing about doing it this way is instead of cooking them in a regular furnace, you get 2 ingots for every ore you smelt this way instead of 1. Now sometimes you'll end up with leftover pieces. You can see here we've got 3 nuggets worth left over. We'll be able to pour 4 ingots, and then we'll have 3 nuggets left. So there's several things you can do with that. Let's go ahead and pour those 4 real quick while we're talking about this. One of the things that happens very often is you won't be keeping very good track, and when you get to your 4th one like this, and you click one more time, you'll get a partial cast. So, like that. It doesn't fill up, and there's really nothing you can do with it short of putting some more nuggets in there to melt up to fill this up. One thing that most people end up doing at this point is they just give up on the 3 nuggets, and they break the table, and they just go back and put another one in later. And if you're not in creative, obviously that casting table wouldn't be destroyed, it would just be broken. And you give up, 3 nuggets worth of whatever you were melting. Now that doesn't happen all the time. If you're just putting in one kind of ore and it's not alloying, you're not going to end up with weird leftovers like that. If you just put in 1 copper, you're going to get 2 ingots out of it directly. But if you do end up with extras, there are a few ways you can save it. So let's take this off for a moment, and let's put in a tank of some kind. So we've got all sorts of tanks here in Feed the Beast. We have woolen tanks, which is all sorts of strange. You can just use more Tinker's Construct tanks if you wanted to. You can do that. You can also use liquid ducts to pipe this out into drums. Transfer nodes work very well. Let's see if we get a drum over here. Oops, not a drunk. Let's get a drum. And let's get a transfer node. Transfer node liquids. And put that on there. You can see it'll just pull all the fluids out of here right into this drum automatically. Now the other nice thing about that is, if you're just trying to store all these things as liquids, you can do this. You can have an array of drums, each with a little bit put in there just so it can only go into that drum, because drums won't take multiple kinds of fluids. You can have an array of these off of one side, and everything you smelt just gets poured off as liquid. Now how do you get it back into this thing once you've done that? Well, it's actually mostly the same way. I'm going to take some of the structure down because it's just kind of unnecessary now. Let's just break a hole in it right here. Go ahead and take this out. Pardon me. Alright, good enough. Now imagine the rest of that's gone. How do you pour this back into the smeltery? Well, one of the things you can do is you can put a drain up on its end like that. And then we're going to put our aluminum brass drum here. And we're going to get our transfer node again. Transfer node. If I can find it. There it is, transfer node liquids. And we're just going to pour that into this open drain. Oops. And you'll see that it comes out of the drum, and it comes right back down into here. So you can store that way and actually pull out of these drums into the smeltery, and this allows you to automate quite a bit. Now the other nice thing you can do is you can take this faucet off, and you can actually automate from the liquid in there onto an ingot casting table, for example, and it will automatically make ingots for you. Well, that's pretty nice, but then you just need some way to automate that into a chest, for example, with a transfer node for items, or even just a vanilla hopper will work just fine, especially early on. So let's put a hopper in here. Let's move this chest over one. Do that. Bring this hopper over. And the nice thing about hoppers is they won't actually pull until the item is complete. So you can see that it pulled one, and then it started filling up the next one. And we ended up in that same situation where we had a little bit of brass left over. So again, same sort of deal. We can just break this table. You can see that that will get pulled by the hopper as well. And we just put this table back, and we put our cast back on it. There it goes. And the next time we put some ore into the system, it's automatically going to make some ingots for us. So let's go ahead and find some ore. Let's throw some iron ore in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we do that, and we should get 12 ingots out of here in just a minute. So while that's cooking up, let's look at a few of the tables. It's all nice that you can get double ore out of this and double ingots, but if you can't do anything with Tinker's Construct and you don't make any tools with it, you're only really using part of this mod. So what do you need for Tinker's Construct? Well, let's go over to the Tinker's Construct section of the mod pack here. And let's see, where is that one? Here we go. Tinker's Construct tool parts, Tinker's Construct tools, and Tinker's Construct blocks. So one of the things that you're going to need is a tool station. That's kind of the most basic thing you need. And to do that, you need one of their crafting stations and a blank pattern. Now, crafting station is just put a regular vanilla crafting table into your crafting grid, and you'll get a crafting station out. And blank patterns are also fairly easy. 2 sticks and 2 planks is 4 patterns. So you can make up several of these patterns. You're going to need a bunch of them to do everything that you're going to do in this. So let's see if they have patterns in here. Actually, let's just do it a different way. Pattern. Alright, so let's just go ahead and get a stack of those and clear out some of this other stuff from our inventory. We are not going to need that. So we need a crafting station as well. Crafting station and a blank pattern is a tool station. It also gives you some of the books, and these books are great if you're new to the mod. It will explain what's going on and how to use each of the different parts of it. Once you have a tool station, you can actually make all of the different Tinker's Construct tools. So here, to make a Tinker's Construct pick, you need a pickaxe head, a tool binding, and a handle. Now, I will say that some of the mod is not quite caught up with the rest of it, so there's no such thing as a handle. It's actually called a tool rod. So if you're looking for how to make a handle and you're searching in NEI, you're not going to find that. I would recommend that you check out the wiki or look at the book. The book is actually up to date, even though the tooltips here are not. So how do you make those parts? well, you need one of the other blocks. The other thing you need is a part builder. The recipe for that is just any kind of log and a blank pattern. So let's go ahead and just grab ourselves a part builder. You're also going to want a pattern chest at some point, which is just a chest and a blank pattern. So let's grab one of those. And then you're also going to want a stencil table. And that's just planks and a blank pattern. So let's get ourselves a stencil table as well. Oops, there it is. So we put these different things out here. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Pattern chest and a stencil table. Now, why did I put the pattern chest in the middle? Well, pattern chests can hook up to the part builder, and you can also dump them from the stencil table into the chest to the part builder, and that's going to be pretty helpful for you. Now, there is an upgrade. You'll see that there's only some types of items here for the tool forge, or tool station rather. The tool forge is the upgraded version of that, and let's look at what that requires. The tool forge is 4 blocks of iron, 3 seared bricks, and a tool station. So basically, once you've got enough iron smelted in here, you'll be able to make blocks of iron and turn this into the tool forge. So generally, you don't need the old one once you have the new one. And the only difference is, you see that this has, what is that, about 13 patterns, plus a couple blank things here that don't have an icon, but that's javelins and throwing knives. The tool forge has a lot more things going on. Now again, in Feed the Beast Infinity, some of these things are missing the icons, but you can make things here that you can't make in the other one. So for example, here you have a pick. That mines 1 block at a time, and it's very customizable. Don't get me wrong, these things are great. But you can make a hammer over here, which is like a pick, but it has 3x3 area of effect. And that's really nice for clearing out a large area very quickly. Same sort of thing, you can make lumber axes here, which can actually fell the entire tree when you chop any 1 block of it. Those 2 things early on are really, really helpful. Excavator is the same way, but for digging, so this is basically a super pick, a super axe, and a super shovel. You can also make different kinds of weapons. You can make scythes that actually harvest crops in an area of effect, cleavers that have a beheading chance to drop mob heads, battle axes that have knockback and have an area of effect attack on trees, all sorts of things in here. And you can even make your own custom bows and arrows. That's all pretty cool. So getting started, let's go check. It looks like our iron is done, so in fact we do have 12 iron ingots, and that's all we had to do is just throw it in there and ignore it, and you just get iron ingots in your chest at the end of it. Pretty awesome. Alright, let's get rid of all of this, and we're going to need some more patterns. So let's see if we can get some patterns here. We're going to throw these all on our stencil table. Oops, I already had some. So here you can see kind of this off to the side, there's some clear icons. I really wish these had a background, but this is how you make the pattern for any of the items you want to do. So we're going to start with a pick, and we need a pickaxe head. So there's one of those, and a tool binding, and a tool rod. Okay, great. We know we need those. Let's go ahead and throw those in the pattern chest. And then let's look at the hammer as well. Or the lumber axe actually is a pretty nice one. It's also good early on. You're going to need a broad axe head, which again you can't see from here, but you can get from the book. A large plate, a tough binding, and a tough rod. So let's see. Broad axe head, large plate, tough binding, and a tough rod. We throw those all in here as well. Alright, so now you have the patterns. What do you do with them? You want to make these out of different materials. That's kind of the whole thing about Tinker's Construct. So if we look, one of the obvious things you can do is use cobblestone. And this is great because in order to make metal parts, you have to have an existing part to pour a cast of. So let's put all of our objects up here. It doesn't matter which one you put these in, really. You can put them in the ingot side or the block side. I usually just put them at the top. And we need a pickaxe head. Boom, we have a stone pickaxe head. Let's get a tough binding and a tool rod. Oops, and I gotta get rid of those stone shards. These are just waste products. You don't really need to do anything with those. You can use them for other things. You can actually smelt them into nuggets of seared stone, but I'll get to that in a little bit. Let's go ahead and get the broad axe head and the large plate and the tough binding and the tough rod. Okay, so now one of the things you could do is you could just make these into the tools right now, and you'd have stone tools, and they'd work just fine. But before we do that, we're actually going to get some aluminum brass going. Let's see if we can get aluminum brass, and let's actually go ahead and use the drum and put it in up at the top, just so we have enough to go ahead with the rest of this explanation. So we'll pour that into here, and oops, we're actually going to have to break that as well because it's making ingots automatically. Sorry about that. Okay, so where's our faucet? Now I will say that if you want to use one to automatically cast ingots, you probably want some way to turn that off. so that you don't do what I just did and start automatically turning everything into ingots. You can't really do everything that way. You need some way to cast these onto other things. So we're going to take our cast back off. We're going to get rid of all of that stuff. And we're going to take all of these parts here and put them in our hotbar because we're going to need them all here. So stone pickaxe head, you can put any kind of part here and then pour aluminum brass over it. And after a moment you'll see you get the cast. Now because that cast is full, it pulled the actual item down into the chest automatically. But that's fine, we wanted to do that anyway. Let's go ahead and throw that in here as well. And then we'll just go to the next thing. The binding. And then the tool rod. And then the large plate. And each of these takes a different amount. One thing I will say is the large plate's a little hard to see until it's done. Then the broad axe head. Tough binding. And tough rod. Now the nice thing about doing this is once you have these casts, you can use them over and over and over for whatever material you want. So if you start out making, I don't know, iron tools, and then eventually you want to make something like manulium or thaumium tools, you can certainly do that, and you don't have to make these casts every time. That's pretty nice. So one thing you have to be careful of now is I have all of this down here, the aluminum brass, and aluminum brass is actually not a valid material for most of the Tinker's Construct parts. So if you look in here, you can see I can make a tool rod out of all these different materials. And this will vary based on which mod pack you have. Some things are added here based on other mods. So thaumium only comes in if you have Thaumcraft. Most of these you can see come from Tinker's Construct though. So it's not too bad to do right off the bat with slime or with netherrack or even molten obsidian. The bone and cactus and that sort of stuff, you can actually do all of that without having a smelter's table just by doing what we did here with stone and use things like flint or bone or cactus for early tools if you want the customizable stuff. Just keep in mind, until you have the iron, you can't actually do like a cactus hammer or anything like that. So you do need to have a fair amount of iron before you can do some of the advanced tools. But in this case, I actually don't want all of this stuff here because I have all these casts, but really I need to get rid of the aluminum that's in this. So we're going to break that and break that. And then we're going to get our transfer node back, which I shouldn't have broken, I should have just clicked. Sorry. Transfer node for liquids. Put that on there. And we'll pump this right back out of the smeltery. It'll take a few minutes, but we should be fine. And there should be enough room in it. There's not enough room in it. Really? It says it's full, but it's still taking a liquid out of there. Alright, well let's see what happens. We can always just put in an empty drum as well. And that is the downside of filling this thing all the way to capacity like that, is that eventually you have to drain it. What should we make our tools out of? Well, that's a very good question, and there's a lot of disagreement about what kinds of things you should use for your tools. Early on, iron is fine. It's pretty easy to get, usually. It's fairly abundant. If we can find bronze, bronze is also pretty good. But you can see each part has different modifiers. So you can see that the tool rod has reinforced 1 and handle modifier 1.3x. So handles generally only modify the durability of the tool. Now some things can add different properties, like this adds stone bound, which means that as this takes durability damage, the lower its durability, the more damage it does. If it's a pick, that means it gets more and more efficiency. If it's a sword, it actually deals more damage. Reinforced means that you can actually have a chance of not taking any durability damage when you use it. And then writable, for things like paper, give extra modifiers you can apply to your tools. Now modifiers we'll talk about when we have some tools here, but generally speaking, a pretty good early game tool is bronze, just because reinforced is pretty decent. It's got a decent mining speed, and mining level is redstone. And you can see the mining levels here change, and the mining speeds change. You can kind of look through in any eye even and just see what you want to do. So if we used something like Invar, that gives mining speed 7 and redstone, durability 450. Bronze, mining speed 8, mining level redstone, durability 550. So in this case, bronze is actually a little bit better for us than Invar. Steel, of course, is fantastic, but it can be very hard to come by early on. And if we look at iron, its mining level is redstone as well, but its mining speed is 6 and its durability is 250. So iron's okay, but bronze is usually the way to go. And bronze is just an alloy of copper and tin. So if you put enough copper and tin in here together, they'll mix into bronze, and let's go ahead and see exactly how much of that you would need. So if we come over here and we do bronze, and we look at the recipe for molten bronze, oops, didn't mean to do that, let's do it this way. We look at the recipe for molten bronze, it's not going to let me do that. There we go. you can see you need 48 millibuckets of molten copper and 1 of molten tin. So 3 copper to 1 tin gives you molten bronze. And you actually get 4 molten bronze for 3 copper and 1 tin. So you don't actually lose any items that way. Copper is usually pretty easy to find. Tin can be fairly easy to find. But in this case, we're actually going to break both of those things, and we're just going to put a drum of bronze in here. So there's a molten bronze drum. Stick that up here. Oops. Transfer node, and we're going to fill this smeltery up with bronze. Okay, so where's our patterns? Here we go. Click all these back in here. Now, one thing that a lot of people like to do is they like to make their bindings out of paper instead of out of metal. And the reason for that is paper makes it writable, and this doesn't affect your durability at all for the bindings. It's a chance to just add extra modifiers to it. Let's see what this looks like first. We're going to pour a bronze pickaxe head, and that's going to go right into our chest. Then we're going to pour a bronze tool rod, and that's going to go into our chest. And then a large plate. You see that that takes quite a bit of bronze. Each of these does take a different amount. Alright, and then we're going to need a broad axe head. And a tough rod cast. Now again, which things are best depends on really what you're using it for. If you want the fastest pick, that might be different than the most durable pick, which might be different than the one that gets you the most items. So you do have to experiment, look at all these different item types. You can go on the wikis and see what people suggest. But the important thing now is we have all these tool bits. And you can see we have everything here except for the bindings. So I'm going to show you how to do those out of paper. Just like we did the cobble earlier, you can just put paper in here. Let's see, get a stack of paper. Put that, and then we need a tool binding. There's a paper binding, and a tough binding takes more. There we go. So now we have those. So in the tool forge, we can go ahead and select which thing we want to make. This is a pickaxe, so we're going to put our pickaxe head here, paper binding, and a bronze tool rod, and now we have a writable, reinforced 1 bronze pickaxe. There we go. And let's also go ahead and do our lumber axe. So we need our bronze axe head, large plate, tough rod, and tough binding, and we have a bronze lumber axe. Now I will say that you can also name your items here. So let's say tree feller. It doesn't cost you any XP, you can just name them when you're making them. This is part of the customized tools. So you have bronze pickaxe and our tree feller. Well, this is great, and these will work. They're pretty fast. Of course, in creative mode you won't be able to see that. And the actual item appearance, if you look at the right hand side of my screen, changes based on what you've put in here. So they look kind of nice as well. Well, that's great, and you can use these. The important thing to note is these tools don't ever actually break. When you run out of durability, you just can't use them anymore until they're repaired. And the repair material is based on usually the kind of head that you put on it. Pickaxe head, axe head, whatever else. And here it will even show you when you hold shift, the repair material is bronze. And here the repair material is bronze. So you just put in here some bronze ingots and the tool, and you'll be able to take it out repaired. You can do that pretty much indefinitely. It doesn't have an increasing XP cost like regular vanilla tools do. So that's also really nice. You can make these have very high durability, but a cheap head, for example, if you just want a basic axe, and it'll be easy to repair all day long if you make a stone axe head. Now, why do we use paper? So here you can see that there are 4 modifiers remaining. Well, what kind of things can you put in here as modifiers? That's a good question, and there are a ton of modifiers as well. So let's go ahead and look at some of these items. One of the things you can do for speed on a tool is you can use redstone, and you can use blocks to make this a little bit faster, or dust. And let's put blocks in the bottom and dust on the top, and you'll see we'll get 10 redstone out of this. And the mining speed will go to 8.8. Now if we take this out, it starts out as 8, so you can get 10% more speed for 10 of this. And you'll see that it says modifiers remaining 3. So let's do this, and you can see 20 of 50, modifiers remaining 3, and it's going to go to 9.6. Which means you can do this 5 times for 1 modifier. And then you can see that it has haste, and our mining speed is now 12 instead of 8. Now granted, that did take us 5 blocks of redstone plus 5 redstone, so that's quite a bit. But that's an easy way to get haste on there. Now what if you wanted to get fortune? Well, fortune is just lapis lazuli, and it works the same way. You can use blocks in the bottom and raw in the top. You can also just use the individual pieces if you wanted to, but you can see 10 out of 450. This is going to take a lot more to get up to a full fortune level. So we're going to do this a lot, and I apologize, it's kind of noisy. You can see that's at 70. We just have a long way to go here. That's at 150. And you can see here we have luck, and that's the equivalent to Fortune 1 if you see that in the tooltip. Keep going for a while. Oops. Whoop. Did that right. Still Fortune 1. We're at 230 at 450. And unfortunately, I think you really do just have to click this back and forth. If you guys do know of a way to make this faster, please let me know. But as far as I know, you just have to go back and forth a lot like that. That's 350, and we're at Fortune 2. So we're getting there. Okay, that's 400, Fortune 2. 2, 3, 4. And you'll see that's 440. That's going to be 450 of 450. That's Fortune 3. So 450. You have Fortune 3 on this thing without any kind of levels, enchanting, whatever else, and you can repair this by just using bronze. That's the beauty of this whole system. Now, granted, that took almost a full stack of lapis and almost a full stack of lapis blocks. But now, you can see we have a very nice looking pick that has Haste 2, I believe, and Fortune 3. Yeah. So Haste and Fortune 3, mining speed is 12. The big downside is the mining level is only redstone. So what if you wanted to add the ability to mine as though it were diamond, but not have to use diamonds to repair it? Well, here you can see we've still got some modifiers. Let's put a diamond on here. Now, it says modifiers diamond. Take this out, and look at the mining level. Obsidian. This now counts as just as durable and just as effective as a diamond pickaxe, but you can repair it using bronze instead of diamonds. So that's a pretty nice little pickaxe right there that you can use for a long time with very easy to get materials. The diamond also adds 500 durability. So the effective durability here with reinforced 1 is 1348. That's actually really nice compared to a standard vanilla pickaxe. And it already has Fortune 3 and Haste on it. Now you can continue adding things. There's all sorts of stuff you can do. One thing you can do is make some fancy things like lava crystals. Lava crystals here from Tinker's Construct. If you add one of these, it'll auto-smelt whatever it mines. That might not be the best thing for you. It does mean you can use cobblestone, it'll smelt into stone, but it also means your ores are going to smelt into 1 ingot each. However, that does sort of work with Fortune. You can, in theory, get more ingots out of the Fortune here, Fortune 3, than you can by doubling them with the Smeltery, but it is kind of a gamble that way. I would not do lava crystals unless you specifically want to get basic ores, and maybe you have multiple kinds of picks for different things. Maybe instead of adding Silk Touch, which you can do also with this Silky Jewel, you maybe just want to have an auto smelter that you can use when you're kind of out and about mining, and something different for when you're trying to gather materials that you want to put through your auto processing systems. Now, as far as what modifiers there are a ton of them, more than I could ever cover in this one video, so please do go to the wiki, look at the books, see what kind of things you can do. I don't know why the guards are hanging out down here, it's a little strange. There's just a ton of different modifiers you can do. And you can do similar things with weapons as well. You can put extra chance of beheading on there, you can put things that make them do more damage. You can use nether quartz for that to make them sharper, add sharpness, all sorts of different things. You can use necrotic bones to give your weapons the wither effect if you want. If you want to have wither enemies and get them back for withering you. Really, there's just all sorts of different options for you. Okay, so what happens when you want to add another modifier and you don't have any more spots left? Like we do have, I believe, one more spot left on this, but let's say we wanted to add something else. Well, there's a couple of different things you can do. You can add a diamond and a gold block. You can add a diamond apple. There's different things you can do to add extra things. Nether stars can give you an extra modifier. Let's look at that real quick. So you can see as soon as I put that in there, it'll say modifiers remaining 2. So you can use a nether star just to give you one more mod on that. That's kind of handy. And same sort of thing. Again, check out the wiki, see what other modifiers you can put on that. It's pretty nice. One thing that's also very, very nice early on is if we get a ball of moss. And you need to get specifically the Tinker's Construct ball of moss. When you put that on one of your tools, you get the moss effect, which doesn't really tell you much. And it does make your tool look all mossy, but when you look at that, it says auto repair. Now there are different levels of this, and each ball of moss adds one level of it. What that does is it will repair itself automatically when you're out and about, and repair itself a little bit faster when you're in the sunlight. That's really, really nice if you have a very expensive tool and you don't want to use materials to repair it. Let's say this whole thing was made out of thaumium, and you didn't want to be spending thaumium ingots to repair this thing. You can use things like drying racks that you can just hang them up outside in the sun and they will repair themselves over time. That's really, really nice. And again, this is a pretty good early game pick that requires only 1 diamond to get, that you could use for a very long time. And that's going to wrap it up for our Tinker's Construct mod. Obviously there's more stuff in this mod pack than we covered today, but I think this will give you a good example of how you can get started, how you can automate some things, and how you can make some different tools with different modifiers and customize them for all your adventuring needs. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button. If you really liked it, then please subscribe. And as always, I've been Brick Waffle. Thank you for watching.